Israel has yet again carried out some deadly bombings across Gaza City, leaving a residential building engulfed in flames. Israel said that the operation targeted Ezzedine Al-Haddad, the head of Hamas's armed wing, and apparently a key figure in the 7th of October attacks. Now, the strikes have once again raised fears that the already very fragile ceasefire is perhaps collapsing because of these repeated Israeli bombings. Take a look.
Officially, there's a fragile ceasefire in Gaza, but airstrikes continue on the ground. On one side, there's a deal meant to slow the war, but on the other, a strike that pulls it back into motion. Israel carried out an airstrike in Gaza City, targeting Ezzedine Al-Haddad, a senior commander in Hamas's military wing. The operation comes as Israel continues acting against what it calls remaining threats from Hamas, even under a formal ceasefire framework. The Israeli military said the strike targeted one of the most important remaining figures in Hamas's military structure in Gaza. Officials described him as a key commander involved in strategic decision-making and operations against Israel. Israeli authorities accused him of being one of the architects of the October 7, 2023 attack and said he was also involved in holding hostages in the aftermath. They also said he rejected a US-brokered plan calling for the disarmament of Hamas and the demilitarization of Gaza. Hamas confirmed the commander's death, describing him as one of the greatest fighters of the Palestinian people. The strike took place in Gaza City's Al-Rimal neighborhood. A residential building was hit first, followed by a second strike on a vehicle in the same area. Shortly after, the news was confirmed and grief spread through the streets of Gaza. His coffin was carried through neighborhoods still scarred by war damage. People lined the roadside as the procession moved slowly through the city. The death marks the latest in a series of losses for Hamas's military leadership. Al-Haddad had risen to a top command role after the killing of several senior figures, including Yahya Sinwar and other key commanders over the course of the war. The strike comes despite a US-brokered ceasefire that remains in place on paper. Israel has continued to carry out strikes during this period, saying it is targeting Hamas operatives and imminent threats. According to the Palestinian Ministry of Health, more than 850 people have been killed since the ceasefire began in mid-October. Officials involved in implementing the agreement say it has delivered only relative stability, not a full halt to violence. The larger concern now is that even under a declared ceasefire, the pattern of targeted strikes continues. High-value Hamas commanders are still being hit, civilian areas are still being affected, and the gap between diplomacy and conditions on the ground remains wide. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
All right, so this is what is happening at this moment in the Gaza Strip, even though in name there is apparently a ceasefire. Now, to put all of this in perspective, we're joined on this broadcast by Mr. Chris Doyle, who is the Director of Council for Arab-British Understanding and its current lead spokesperson. Mr. Doyle, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on WION. This is not the first time that in the middle of a ceasefire, Israel has carried out attacks inside of the Gaza Strip. Is there any meaning to say that there is a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip, considering what's been happening pretty much on a day-to-day basis? Does Israel believe in a political process, or do you think it wants to find every solution through the military way?
For the Israeli leadership, this is a ceasefire in name only. And it's very similar indeed to the way in which it's handled the 17th of April ceasefire agreement regarding Lebanon, where it's killed nearly 400 people since that date. So for Prime Minister Netanyahu, he was pretty much forced to accept this ceasefire deal over Gaza by the Trump administration, anxious to bring about some sort of deal for the reconstruction of Gaza and to end all the horrors that had gone there, but has worked assiduously ever since to undermine it. And of course, the assassination of one of Hamas's top leaders will just, bring, Hamas's acquiescence in this ceasefire into serious question. And I don't think that Prime Minister Netanyahu will be at all concerned if this breaks out into a full-fledged, end of ceasefire right now, whereby Israel will actually move its military forces and start shelling at a far more sharper, more intensive rate than it has been recently. The situation in Gaza also, many other areas are still being bombed. We're still not seeing the proper implementation of the agreement in terms of the allowing proper access for humanitarian aid. So it really is very dire in the Gaza Strip right now, and none of this will ease those tensions. I suspect that Palestinians in Gaza right now will be expecting the worst.
I think you've raised a couple of important points there, because the world's attention has shifted away from the Gaza Strip. We're talking about this war in Iran, but in the Gaza Strip, even though there is apparently some kind of a ceasefire, there is not enough humanitarian aid that is being allowed into the Gaza Strip. There's not enough food and medicines and other essentials that people need to survive on a day-to-day basis. Mr. Doyle, I want you to also, weigh in on the role that is being played by this Board of Peace that was instituted by Donald Trump. Board of Peace said that it will take more than a generation just to clear the rubble, and probably then we can think of a reconstruction of the Gaza Strip. Netanyahu this week has said that Israel is in control of 60% of Gaza Strip's territory. In your assessment, is there any chance that there could be peace in Gaza Strip and there could be reconstruction of any kind done through the Board of Peace? And what role is the Board of Peace actually even playing here?
The Board of Peace was a creation by the Trump administration. It was largely to bypass the United Nations and the sense that the international community as such had any role in the reconstruction of Gaza in this ceasefire. But it was very much a US-dominated body. It remains as such. And it is essentially trying to establish the contours of how Gaza will be ruled. It's laid out a whole series of plans for its reconstruction that truly does not include Palestinians and Palestinian input. It should be a Palestinian leadership, a credible, legitimate Palestinian leadership that determines how reconstruction goes on and is carried out within Gaza. But instead, what we saw is really a remodeling of President Trump's Gaza Riviera plan with lots of hotels and a plush seafront, very much all the sorts of things that a big businessman might wish to see happen, that his friends in the business community can pick up lots of contracts for, but not something that a shattered community trying to rebuild their society, their very existence, would necessarily have prioritized. Why would they want five-star hotels? That is not in their immediate interest. And as you say, this is going to take years. And since then, all these extremely expensive plans that are going to cost billions, well, where's the funding going to come from? Because the Trump administration hoped that, for example, the oil, gas-rich states of the Gulf would be the major contributors. But they, of course, now have their own financial problems, their own threats to their own security because of the Iran war and because of the failure to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. So given all of this, Gaza is very much slipping back into Israel's orbit, and it will be at the whim of the Israeli Prime Minister as to what happens. And as you say, there is this creeping further control by the Israeli military authorities of Gaza, and I wouldn't be surprised if that figure of 60% that they now claim to control will gradually increase, and they will shrink that area in which most Palestinians are living to an ever smaller size, but also in ever more squalid conditions. We're seeing lots of diseases, infestation of vermin such as rats. This is really just intensifying the hellish conditions that over 2 million Palestinians are trying to survive in.
Indeed. Thank you very much, indeed, Mr. Chris Doyle, for joining us with that perspective.
Thank you.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.